radio show on Hamilton Radio, My Sports Radio.
Deals and Bonds hits right high. It's a dig. It is on the all-time home run list.
Trainer right next to me is saying it. You may hear him. Down goes Frazier. Down goes Frazier. Down goes Frazier. The heavyweight champion is taking the mandatory 8 count, and Foreman is as poised as can be in a neutral corner.
Do the Titans have a miracle left in them? Down. Touchdown Titans. There are no flags on the field. It's a miracle. Tennessee has pulled a miracle.
My Sports Radio. And here's your host, Sean Intel.
What is going on, everybody? You're listening on Hamilton Radio. You're here with your boy, John Entel, on My Sports Radio, and we have an action-packed day today. We have author Chris Donnelly joining us at the 5 p.m. hour talking Mets, Yankees. It is going to be a great conversation with them. Cannot wait. Been looking to have him on for the last few weeks. So no doubt it will be awesome to have him on later on. Guys and girls, we have a storm that just took out New Jersey. It was crazy. I have no power, possibly till the weekend. Nuts. So I hope every single person at the storm that the hurricane affected is healthy and safe wherever you are. So please do what you got to do to stay cool. Gets a little warm out there. But let's get to sports. Trout homers in his first at-bat as a father. Cespedes walks out on the team. The Braves are going down like flies. Still, no positive tests in any bubble whatsoever. And my Rangers pooped the bed. So, we're going to start with a little playoff hockey, man. I was pumped up, absolutely energized to watch the Rangers play. Just playoff hockey in general, man, is dynamite. It's awesome to watch. The energy's there. Even though the fans aren't there, the energy, for me, is still there. And I say the Rangers are a dark horse to make a nice run. I think the Avalanche are going to win it. Still think the Avalanche are going to win it. Can't say the Rangers are going to be a dark horse anymore. It was pathetic. Let's just put it that way. Ranger fans who are watching right now, it pains my heart. We got outplayed on every end possible. Our top 5 guys were nowhere to be found. Out-hustled, outmanned, out-hit, outshot. The defense just looks sketchy at times. So I am quite disappointed today as a New York Ranger fan. Got swept in the qualifying round 3-0. It's as bad as it gets. But with that being said, still great playoff hockey ahead of us. New York Islanders lead the series 2-1. So you guys have to look forward to a little Islanders. At least there's still a New York team out there. 1 win away from moving on. We have the Flyers that did look dominant. So the Flyers have a little bit of steam rolling ahead. I know that some of my Flyers guys wrote to me. It was a great day for them. Oilers Blackhawks series tied at 1 apiece. That is something to look forward to. Penguins Canadiens tied 1 apiece. Something to look forward to. Playoff hockey is just another level. I don't care what anybody says. Playoff hockey is just a whole nother level. So I'm excited being so. You know what it is? We don't have to worry about the coronavirus. That's why I'm really excited. We don't have to worry about the coronavirus. We're in a bubble. We're playing. No delays. No postponements. Nothing. Players are tested. They're negative. They're staying safe. They're playing. They're doing what they're supposed to do to just continue to play, and you have to love it. So hockey, it's awesome. I'm glad we're in. I'm glad we're seeing it. We need to see it. I think this playoff format's actually pretty cool. The top seeds get to play each other for seeding. The bottom teams qualify. I don't know if logistically you can make it work year in, year out, but I think it'd be pretty cool if you could. So hopefully, with that being said, we can continue to watch some great hockey. I'm going to move on here to baseball. It has been quite the roller coaster before the season. During the season, we got guys dropping left and right. Shohei Ohtani, unlikely to pitch again. I think this guy's going to have to make a choice here. I think he's going to have to make a decision if he wants to be a pitcher or if he wants to be a hitter. This is a couple years in a row now, man, that he's just been injured. Tommy John surgery, October 2018. Discomfort in his shoulder, discomfort in his elbow. It's bad. And listen, we've seen a couple guys come out, want to be two-way players, right? And Bumgarner's probably the closest we've seen to someone successful where Bumgarner is he's adamant about hitting when he's in the lineup. He loves to hit. He's good at it. He tries to perfect that aspect of the craft, so I give him a lot of credit. But listen, we had one of the greatest hitters of all time, also as a great pitcher, right back when Babe Ruth did it, and he had to pick one. So, unfortunately, I think Shohei Ohtani's two-way player days are done. I think they should be done. I think if I'm the Angels, I'm telling them, dude, pick one. You get hurt way more pitching than you do hitting, and we need you as a hitter. You're dynamic in that sense. So I think it's important for us to have you. So he's gotta pick one or the other. And I think hitting is the way to go. I think that lineup is potent. And other teams that are unfortunately we're catching fire, and now they're starting to take a step back. Ozzie Albies from the Braves, Matt Adams, both on the 10-day injured list. And you guys know their pitcher, Mike Soroka, big-time top starting pitcher for the Braves, tore his Achilles tendon. So this Braves team is promising. Started out a little bit shaky, but then started to pick it up, started to get hot. The Braves are 8-4. They're commanding their division for sure. But if these injuries keep stacking up, man, it is going to speak trouble for the Atlanta Braves. My Mets, listen, we are 1-2, 1-2 in a row, 3-2, looked promising. Our bullpen, has anyone ever seen a worse bullpen in their life? I mean, seriously, Edwin Diaz has got to be one of the most awful closers in the history of baseball. This guy, every single time he's warming up in the bullpen, you can't tell me you don't think the Mets are going to lose. There's no way. Of course you think the Mets are going to lose because they're probably going to lose. They're the worst 8th or later team franchise I've seen in a long time. I mean, truthfully, I'm not saying it because I'm hard on the Mets. It's just, it's very, very tough to watch a team that has leads or is in games, just blow more opportunities than the Mets do to control their own fate, their own outcome. We have to do something with the bullpen. It can't just be DeGrom. As great as DeGrom is, off to another stellar start, we have to put pieces together around him. We cross over to our crosstown rivals, the New York Yankees. Oh, man. Is this team as good as advertised. Dude, they are sick. 8-1. Aaron Judge, when Aaron Judge is healthy, is there another hitter other than Mike Trout that is as good as Aaron Judge? I mean, seriously. 6 home runs, 14 RBIs, batting .314 in 9 games. Dude, the guy is electric. Electric. That offense, in general, is electric. Team stats. Slugging percentage, 1st overall. On-base percentage, 6th. Batting average, 10th. Runs tied for 12th. Anytime you could be in the upper echelon of the major hitting categories, you are headed for a great season. DJ LeMahieu continues. Is this guy not one of the most underrated players in the league? He was in Colorado. He did great things. Comes to the Yankees. He's batting .412. I mean, it is on-base percentage .429, slugging .618. The guy is dynamic, but come on, top to bottom. We knew that was going to happen. LeMahieu, Aaron Judge, Hicks, Torres, Andujar. I mean, it's a scary. Giancarlo Stanton it's a scary proposition. Not to mention the $300 million man, Garrett Cole. 3 wins, a 2.55 ERA with 16 strikeouts. This team is as good as advertised. They really are. The team is as good as advertised. I don't like to ever admit it. It's tough for a Mets fan to continuously see their counterparts across the way just be as good as they are, man. But I just don't know a team that's run as well as it is from top to bottom. I don't. They continue to get the players they need. They continue to somehow reload. Aaron Boone is amazing at doing what he does. He manages people very well. He manages the analytics very well. So you have to give credit where credit is due. And I'm looking up and down this roster. Wow, there is no weaknesses. And for anyone who said the Dodgers, which I'm one of them, they're 8-4. They've played 3 more games. They're also dynamic. But can the Dodgers really compete with this type of hitting? I don't know, man. I think pitching wins championships, but this may be one of those years where hitting sort of separates the men from the boys. And I said it on the last show, A.J. Pollock, dynamic when he's healthy. 3 home runs, batting .364, 6 RBIs. Corey Seager batting .356. Another team here, runs 3rd in the league, batting average 11th, on-base percentage 10th, slugging percentage 6th, upper echelon of the league, top 10 in every major statistical hitting category. Another tough team, but that Yankee team is scary. So if I'm a Yankee fan today, I'm feeling good about what I see. I'm thinking to myself, that we have a real opportunity, even though it's a shortened season. I don't care what people say, man. Listen, shortened season or not, you got to go out there and play 60 games in 66 days. It's not easy on any of the players. They are still traveling. And then you have the setbacks. The Miami Marlins finally came back, which is great, right? So that is also a really good thing. That they're back, no more positive tests. The Phillies look like they're on their way. I know the Cardinals have a setback. I think the Marlins were an eye-opener. I think the Marlins sort of told teams, hey, we either got to do this the right way or we're done. A lot of players lobbied for their money. So this is one of those things where I don't think they're willing to risk any of it. So I think the players are going to start to do some good things. Rob Manfred he put the coronavirus police in place to watch teams. Hopefully it works. We'll see what happens. But other than that, I think this baseball season is going to be great. He sent a message essentially saying, hey, this needs to happen. Let's make it happen. And they're going to make it happen. So baseball standings right now, Yankees 8-1, Orioles surprising 5-4, Tampa Bay Rays a very surprising 5-6. I like the Rays. I like the Rays to push the Yankees. Minnesota Twins, they just hit their way. They hit their way to wins. Same formula as last year. Hit home runs, figure the rest out later. 9-2. Chicago White Sox turned it around. 7-4. Oakland A's, same thing. 7-4. They always find a way. Houston Astros still hanging in there. Half game behind the A's. Still a dynamic team. Sign stealing scandal or not, still dynamic. Marlins 3-1. The rest of the National League East is pretty abysmal. 4-4 Nationals, 1-3 Phillies, 4-8 Mets. The Cubbies 9-2. Everyone else is well behind. So the Cubs look like they figured out who they are. They're going to make a nice run. Rockies 8-2. Dodgers 8-4. Padres 7-5. A very good division there. In the top half of that division. So we'll see what happens going forward, but I'm excited to hear some of the cases are going down. We're excited to see some of the big name players, Juan Soto coming back. We're excited to see, obviously, these other guys making their way back into baseball again. It's exciting. You never want to see players go down, regardless of who it is, guys. You just don't want to see it, right? You want to see everyone full strength. You want to see the best playing. Want to give a big shout out to Mike Trout. Hits a home run in his first at-bat as a father. Pretty freaking cool, man. You have a kid, no better feeling in the world than having a kid. And to be able to do that, not bad at all. I like it, man. A lot of the Angels players giving him a hard time. But great to see, dude. Mike Trout, I don't want to say the face of baseball because he's not in New York and not many people get to see him. But Mike Trout, for me, is the face of baseball. When you make the most money and you're really dubbed the modern day Mickey Mantle, you're the face of baseball. You're not really injured for long periods of time. People get to hear about you. People get to see you. They know what you're doing. So it's a great day, man. So excited for Mike Trout. Congrats to him, his wife, his family. Big day, and to top it off by hitting a home run. That's all. That's all you could ask for, you know. So, my Mets in the dumpster. The Yankees on top of the world, and this is unfortunately this is where we're gonna go with it with baseball. We move over to football. A lot to talk about in football. The reason why there's a lot to talk about in football is because there is a lot of players, big name players, opting out across the league. And I don't know how it's going to play a role, but Von Miller, Pro Bowler, perennial Pro Bowler, all-decade selection, 2010s, opted out. One of the Broncos' main linemen opted out. 7 or 8 Patriots players opt out. Wilson becomes the second Dolphins wide receiver to opt out. This is a really, really big deal. I don't know if we see any more players opting out, but here's the problem. You and I both know. Before they get to the field, there is going to be many more positive tests for coronavirus. We know this. There's no way to avoid it. So, with all of these with all these players starting to opt out, and big names, guys, there might not be a bigger name than Von Miller right now opting out, but guys like him, Dante Hightower, Patrick Chung, these are not just names. They're major names. And you know what happens. It's a domino effect in any league. Once major players, once major names start to sort of take that turn in that direction, everything else, it's a domino effect. Everything else starts to go downhill. And it's going to really, really take a toll on some of these teams. Listen, the Patriots could potentially have a new starting quarterback in Cam Newton, right, who's coming back from injury, needs a lot to prove. Cam Newton's coming to a beat-up team now. You know, we were saying, okay, Cam Newton's going to do his thing. He's got a good defense around him. They were solid last year. They were solid last 2 years. Now Cam Newton doesn't even have that defense essentially around him. So now what? You got to hope Cam Newton could be the Superman of old? That's a lot of pressure on somebody. The Giants have a new coach in Joe Judge. He's got no time to work with his players, and players are opting out. The Cowboys have a new head coach in Mike McCarthy, with a quarterback who's looking to get paid big money, can't get on the field to work with these players. There is a ton of new faces over at the Buccaneers, team right now, facility. Can't get on the field. I mean, it's pretty bad right now, all across. I'm not imagining them starting on time. I really don't even know how they're going to play. But either way, football's going to look pretty tough once it comes back. If somebody feels different, they can most certainly state their case and tell me how they feel about it. But honestly, there's no way you can tell me any different. Football is the most contact-related sport. There's guys opting out because they're nervous and they're big names. It is going to be very, very tough to see a real good game, a much more football holistic game that we're used to seeing without injuries. They say soft tissue injuries. I'm saying major injuries, not just soft tissue. It's going to be tough. But we'll see as the days come on, as the weeks go by, the days go by, and the season gets closer. You never know what's going to happen. So I'm hoping we get to play this year. I'm hoping because it's a promising year for the Cowboys. As a Cowboys fan, I think we have the right tools in place, and I think with more and more players opting out across the league, I don't want to say it's the easy way out, but I mean, it sure as hell looks like it's positive for the Cowboys. So let's see what happens, man. And Andy Williams said it over here, no more gentlemen's clubs for people. No more chicken wings at the gentlemen's clubs. It's time for these guys and girls to get serious. It's funny because Derek Jeter said something that made a lot of sense. He's talking about a very young club. The Marlins don't particularly, they know they don't really have a shot. They're 3-1 right now, but for all intents and purposes, that's not going to last too long. I think we all know that. And he said, man, I just don't think these guys took it serious. They didn't care about it as much as they should have. They didn't wear their masks. They didn't wash their hands. They didn't, they were going out in groups, going to people's houses. And regardless, we know that it's not affecting really the quote unquote healthy people as much as it is the elderly, people with underlying issues. But guys, if you're not careful enough, it'll sneak up on you. You'll get it. You'll be out for 2 weeks. And listen, you can affect other people around you. It's not just you. You go and see somebody's grandparents. That's bad. You have somebody in your team that has an underlying health issue that they didn't know about. Right? The pitcher from the Red Sox, he got it shortly after, had like a heart disease. So it's pretty scary, man. You just don't know. You got to take it serious. You really have to be super attentive. And I think if you're vigilant about it, the success of the protocols, the success of the steps that the league's put in place will set you up for a bright future going forward. But it's a tough hill to climb. And Derek Jeter said it best. Like I said, if you don't pay attention to it, you're down Poops Creek with no paddle. And football's got a lot of teams, man. Listen, this year's a lot of teams that need to prove themselves. Juju Smith-Schuster's got to have a big year. Ben Roethlisberger had 3 tendons torn off his elbow. Got to have a big year this year. Got to come back with a vengeance. They've been drafting really well. They've been surrounding themselves very, very well on defense. So he's got to come back this year strong. Guys, welcome Andy. My mom's in the building. What's going on? Anthony Buzio, how are we doing, buddy? Thank you for joining in. A bit of an odd day. Normally, I'm able to kind of post some stuff that I want to post, get everyone's reactions, build it up a little bit. Obviously, we have guest Chris Donnelly, which we're excited about coming on, but I haven't had power, still don't have power at the house. So this week was a bit of an odd layout for us, unfortunately. But you know what? As all great productions do, you roll with the punches and you keep it moving, and that's what we do here. So at the 5 p.m. hour, we're gonna have Chris Donnelly on. He's an author, 3 books. Doc, Donnie the Kid, and Billy Brawl. How the 1985 Mets and Yankees fought for New York's baseball soul. How the Yankees explain New York. And baseball's greatest series, Mets and Yankees through the 90s and up to the Subway Series. I am most intrigued by that. The reason why is, for me, it felt like that was yesterday. So I'm real interested to see where Chris started there. His takes on it, why he specifically felt, why he really wanted to speak about these things and write about these books in particular in these situations. So I'm excited to get going, and I want to pick his brain about where baseball is now, how he feels about the season. Should we be playing? Does he think it's going to finish? Are we heading a good direction? So when Chris gets here with us, like I said, at the 5 p.m. hour, he's going to be calling in. Excited to have him on, pick his brain, and walk through some stories, man. It's going to be great. And he's a New Jersey resident, so I know he's a good guy because we try and steer away from some of the crazy. So excited to have on one of my fellow New Jersey natives, which is great. So that's what we're going to have at the 5 p.m. hour. We talked about hockey for a little bit. We talked about baseball, the standings, where we are. We touched on football. And it is going to be, we're a little bit all over, but it's that type of day, that type of conversation. Donald Long, one of our resident Flyers fans, he has been so gracious to remind me constantly of, he's reminding me constantly of how the Rangers choked. Donald Long, why have enemies when you have friends like you, right? Great guy. Thanks for reminding me constantly. Anthony Buzio saying he has 2 of his books. Awesome, man. I'm excited, and we're gonna ask him some questions, man. We're gonna dive in. You have any questions? You let me know. We'll ask him any and all questions. Like I said, excited to have him on today and pick his brain. But Don Long, thank you for always reminding me of how the Rangers choked. You're a great, great friend. Thank you so much. Honestly, though, without being sarcastic about it, without being funny, all jokes aside, they choked, Don. They choked. Period. Panarin, Zibanejad, Kreider, these upper echelon guys that are supposed to carry us through were nowhere to be found. And that's the difference with good teams and great teams, right? The great players always rise to the occasion. The cream always rises to the top. And I'm a big believer. I still think that the Rangers have a better team, top to bottom. I think that they just got outplayed, man. They got outworked. And when it's playoff time, fans or no fans, whatever, you got to show up. You have to show up. You have to show out. And that is exactly what the Flyers are doing right now, and that's exactly what the Canes did, and that's exactly what the Rangers didn't do. Tampa Bay's up 2-0. very interesting, man. The Bruins just look bad right now. They look anemic, right? It's pretty. The Boston Bruins, before they started, I thought that age was going to be a factor with them. If you remember, I don't think they have enough. I just don't think they have enough in the tank to make a run. I know that they were off, but I think it's tougher for older, quote unquote, older teams to kind of get those gears going again. So we'll see what happens right now. But man, the Flyers are looking very good right now. Period. There's nothing else you could say. The Flyers are looking good. They're looking strong. The Islanders look pretty good, up 2-1. Arizona and Nashville 1-1. It's just weird to say Arizona's in a qualifier, that they're doing anything. I totally forgot Arizona's even like a franchise, and it's a shame. That whole conundrum that happened with their GM, I don't know if you guys heard about it, man, but young GM, youngest in the league, gets the job, right? Sort of reignites the flames inside the Coyotes organization, and ownership comes in. They extend him. They give him the keys to the car, and they say, we want to build around you for the next 5 to 10 years. You've been doing what you're doing. And then other teams pursue him. Arizona says, no, we don't want to let you talk to other teams. But honestly, do you blame them? No, the Devils were one of those teams that wanted to talk to him. Very, very weird dynamic. The Coyotes block it, and the GM, right before going into the bubble, quits on Arizona. Literally says, I'm done. I quit. I'm not doing this anymore. So I don't know if I've ever seen a weirder situation than what's going on with GM John Shaka, man. It is, dude, it's such a weird, I don't know if you guys heard about it. It came out a week ago, but literally right before the bubble, the guy was like, you don't want to let me talk? You don't want to let me talk to teams? I'm out of here. So weird, dude, but I guess it happens. Yeah, Don, I agree. I love Quinn. I think he's a great coach for the Rangers. I think it is, I think Henrik Lundqvist is done for sure. I think his contract was impossible for us to get rid of him, unfortunately. And I don't want to say get rid of him like I wanted him gone. The King has been, for me, the greatest goaltender. I mean, it was really a pleasure and an honor to get to watch him in net. Between those two poles, man, there wasn't many who did it better. He just was never surrounded by the team that can put enough offense on the board. When I thought Rick Nash joined the team, it was too little, too late. He had a couple nice seasons, but it was a tough hill to climb, and that was it. Period. There was nothing else to it. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what the future holds. But yeah, I'm hoping. Like I said, I don't want this to be taken the wrong way. I'm hoping he's done for the sake of the franchise being able to move on, not because I don't appreciate what he's done. And I think that's a big deal. I think people have to really bring clarity to how they feel about it. There wasn't many that that have done it as well as he has, man. So people need to show respect for it. And Lundqvist, as great as he was, everyone's time comes to an end. Father Time is undefeated. So yes, I saw the game. Colorado, like I said, man, Colorado 2-1, bro. You picked the Boston Bruins. I picked the Colorado Avalanche. Just remember that, my friend Don Long. Just remember that I said the Avalanche, and you said the Bruins. So keep that in mind. Give credit where credit's due. We'll see what happens going forward. Still early on, obviously, but I think, like I said, the Avs, this is all Avs all day long. So we'll see, but I'm looking down the slate of games here. Wednesday tonight, Colorado's at Dallas, whatever at means, right? Pittsburgh, Montreal, Edmonton, Chicago. Two big games, series tied at 1-1 for Penguins, Montreal, Edmonton, Chicago. So we'll see. We'll see what happens there. I think the Penguins are too much. I think Edmonton's going to overcome this. They looked atrocious game one, but I think they're going to overcome it. Andy Williams is still saying Vegas. I hear you, brother, but I'm not sold on Vegas. But listen, everyone's entitled to their pick. It's not a bad pick, bro. It's not at all a bad pick. I'm just not sold on them. But they look good game one. They won 5-3. So why not, right? Why not pick them and see what happens from there? So hockey, no positive tests in both bubbles. They're doing it the right way. So I appreciate it. I love it. We can continue to do it. I'll swing over here into the NBA. I haven't done much NBA watching. But I have to say, I'm hearing that it's been very, very lackluster. I'm hearing the NBA games are not that exciting. I think that it's going to be a tough hill to climb when you don't have Clippers versus Lakers, right? When you have like the Wizards playing and the Nets playing and the Spurs playing. We know these teams don't really have a chance. It's tough to watch. It's tough to care. So I don't see it. I don't see it being exciting for a couple weeks. But hopefully I'm wrong. Hopefully it's hopefully it's something that we'll pick up. I think all sports right about now is great. So we'll see what happens. But like I said, basketball, I'm hearing it's lackluster, but I could also see why. The other day, I don't know if anyone heard, the Bucks played the Nets. The Nets overcame the largest deficit in, I think it was 2 decades. I have to go back and look, but in over 2 decades, they were favored. Well, the Bucks were favored by 19 points, and the Nets beat them straight up. But why were they favored? Because they thought Giannis would play. They thought Middleton would play. These guys played 16 minutes, and they mailed it in because they knew they didn't have to play, and the Nets beat them. But I'll tell you what, if I'm on DraftKings, FanDuels, wherever you bet, doesn't matter, I would be livid if I picked the Bucks to cover that spread. And 4 minutes into the second quarter, they're not even playing anymore. I would be, oh boy, I'd be mad. Glennie Freeman, what's going on? What time do the Red Wings play? The Red Wings play never time. But dude, come on, bro. Sit down. You want to know why? The Red Wings had their run already. The Red Wings had their run. I would call it a hockey dynasty. I mean, come on, dude. The Red Wings were crazy good for 25 years. So I don't want to hear it. You know what I mean? They let's give some other teams an opportunity to do some great things. Thanks, Glennie. All right? Even though I know that's the only good thing going on in Detroit. I know the Pistons are done. Glennie, our Detroit, our one Detroit follower here. By the way, Detroit Tigers are 5-5. Glennie, 5-5, brother. Not bad. They have an opportunity. I don't really know to do what, but they have an opportunity here. You imagine being 5-5 with a run differential of -11? You're actually 500, but have lost your 5 games by more than 11 runs. It's just odd to me how a team can even be 5-5 without at least being even in the run differential or a little bit positive. Like the Indians, 6-6 with a +2 run differential. Makes sense, right? Because obviously they've had close games, they've won a few, lost a few close. All right, whatever. But Detroit just better than expected, man. You take what you can get, right? Beggars can't be choosers. You could always be the Mets. I'm just saying. You could always be my Mets. They're 4-8. Cespedes walks off. Bro, dude, Cespedes, is this not nuts? So the guy before the season started, Cespedes before the season started, the contracts were renegotiated. Cespedes is now playing for $6 million with a ton of incentives. Has anyone seen 4 years? In 4 years, now we know a baseball season is 162 games, right? Everyone knows this. In 4 years, Cespedes has played 251 games, a season and a half, and he's made $100 million. Have you ever seen a team robbed more than the Mets? I'm not even sure if it's possible that anybody else could pull off this highway robbery as well as Yoenis Cespedes did. It's incredible. 4 years, 251 games combined for $100 million. I don't even understand. So the guy's prorated salary was $6 million with a ton of incentives. Story coming out of Citi Field is he wasn't in the lineup. The guy was in the midst of a 13 at-bat stretch with 9 strikeouts in those 13 at-bats, okay? And the Mets were like, listen, we're not going to let you play through it. We got to sit you down. We got to have somebody else pitch. And it's crazy because he just doesn't show up. And then, obviously, what's the one out that'll get you sympathy with everybody? You blame it on COVID, right? All of us can understand. I don't want to risk COVID. Okay, makes sense. You don't ever want to tell somebody when to risk it, how to risk it, whatever. You never want to do that. But the reports are that the Mets with the incentives had an at-bat clause where he had to reach a certain amount of at-bats and get a certain amount of hits to trigger his incentives. And he saw the writing on the wall, said, I wasn't going to get my at-bats, so I'm not going to show up anymore. The guy disappears completely. The Mets send people to his room. They think something happened to him. They don't know. I mean, dude, it is really the nuttiest thing I've ever seen in my life. But thank you, Cespedes. 4 years, 251 games, $102 million. You have officially done nothing and made away with more money than anyone in the history of baseball. More than Bonilla, more than Carl Pavano, more than Jacoby Ellsbury. You have officially taken the cake with this one, my friend. So thank you for once again giving my New York Mets some more bad news. And you really don't want to beat a dead horse, right? But can anything else bad happen to the Mets? Like, just as a franchise, the owners are $300 million in debt. They don't want to sell the team. Baseball bails them out. Cohen comes in, offers them $2.2 billion for 80% ownership stake. The Wilpons still find a way to sabotage the deal. They hire Brody Van Wagenen, who literally cannot find his ass from his elbow. He keeps doing these moves. He's selling the farm system for guys like Edwin Diaz and Robinson Cano in a terrible contract. I mean, guys, the franchise is a dumpster fire. And I keep coming back for abuse. I do. I'm the guy that just loves to get beat up. I don't know why. I need to expect more, right? I should expect more. Fans should expect more. I don't know if it's something in my DNA here that's just telling me, like, John, go back. Get killed. I don't know. And I'd still buy tickets to the game, too. Like, as if to add insult to injury, I'd want to go to the game to watch the disaster happen. I don't know why. Man. It's bad news. But Cespedes, highway robbery is. I mean, does anyone else have anybody out there that they can think of? Please tell me. If you can think of somebody who has literally played less games for a team and made more money, I want to know him. Tell me. Because I think Carl Pavano played what? How many games did Carl Pavano play? I got to look here. Because I know Carl Pavano was also, Carl Pavano was also a disaster. 4 years, $40 million, and he recorded 10 starts? Let me see. Is that what it was? Only 10 starts? No, it can't be just 10 starts. Let me see. Wow. Oh, my gosh. Okay, so, all right, Carl Pavano's up there. 10 starts, $40 million, 4-year contract. Okay, that's pretty bad. I mean, AAA looks bad. AAA, you have to understand, they sold off anybody with potential. Edwin Diaz, I said it on the last show, Don. Edwin Diaz, if anybody looked at Edwin Diaz previous year, Luis Rojas now says, Luis Rojas not saying if Edwin Diaz has lost the closer's role. By the way, you should keep Edwin Diaz in the closer's role. It's great to have him blow saves after save after save after save. It's great to watch. I'm a big believer in just letting him blow saves. But think about this. Edwin Diaz, I said it. 2018 has a phenomenal year. 56 saves. The year before, 34 saves, right? What does he got here? An ERA of 3.2 with 14 blown saves? Is this right? I mean, come on, guys. The next year has a good year, and then the guy's a stud? You trade away major prospects for this? I don't understand. I really don't. I don't know where we're going with this. But this is the time we live in. I mean, we can't get any worse. The Mets have a couple pieces. Allen, Jimenez, Mauricio, Alvarez, but nothing worth telling me that I need to look at this. Nothing that tells me somebody's going to come up in the farm system like a Pete Alonso. So it says Mauricio is pretty much our best at shortstop. MLB ranked him number 62 overall. Okay, but shortstop, what does shortstop get you? fielding only, right? We saw that, and by the way, we have Amon Rosario. So what are we going to do? Trade Amon Rosario for nothing? Trade Amon Rosario for over-the-hill players with bad contracts that we want to try and win right now? Has anyone seen Jed Larry? We signed Jed Larry in the offseason. He was supposed to be a contributing piece over at third. Anyone see Jed Larry? I haven't. So if someone sees Jed Larry, please let me know. He's once again injury riddled. Suffers another setback. It says here. PCL laxity in his left knee. I don't even know what that means, dude. Wow. His Jed Larry's Mets tenure is all but over. Is that not funny, dude? He didn't play a game. It's all but over, his season. This is real good. Promising. Brody Van Wagen, killing it, dude. You're just signing studs, man. Left and right. This is what we have to look forward to in the very near future of our franchise being run. So, there it is. But hey, Yankee fans, don't worry. You have Aaron Judge. You have Andujar. You have Gleyber Torres. You have Sanchez. You have Giancarlo Stanton. You have DJ LeMahieu. I mean, dude, if you don't win 2 or 3 championships, it's a joke. So, I hate to say that that they're much more promising, but they are, and that's just a fact. So, we'll see. We'll see what happens, but big things ahead for the Yankees. I think it is a collision course. Dodgers-Yankees, World Series, foregone conclusion. The Moneyball approach only, by the way, Don, the Moneyball approach only works with guys that have a brain. Billy Beane hired great people around him to perfect his system, right? So that's why Billy Beane was able to do what he did. Peter Brand was a major part of Billy Beane's success. Major. People forget that these guys are guys who turn franchises around because their baseball acumen is through the roof. Theo Epstein, case in point. Theo Epstein worked his way up the ladder. And at age 46 now, has turned around, has literally turned around multiple franchises. Won a Red Sox World Series for the first time in 86 years. Won a Cubs World Series for the first time in 104 years. How is it that guys can consistently go to certain teams, certain franchises, and other teams can't get it right? Why is it that the Mets can never get it right? It's ownership. Guys and girls, it's ownership. I say it all the time. If your owners are willing to bite the bullet for a few years and say we're rebuilding, the sky is the limit. But you cannot have guys like the Wilpons that are consistently trying to sabotage their own team. Look at the moves. Look at the signings and where they were signed in the past. Mo Vaughn, over the hill. Roberto Alomar, over the hill. Robinson Cano, over the hill. Has there ever been a franchise that's done less with young pitchers than the Mets have? 2015 Mets. You're talking about a team with Syndergaard. You're talking about a team with Matt Harvey. You're talking about a team with DeGrom, with David Wright, with a healthy Cespedes, a Matt, Addison Reed. And if you remember, Addison Reed was real good. He was a real good relief pitcher at that time. I mean, but look at the lineup here. Matt Harvey, Syndergaard, DeGrom, Matt. Can you do less with that lineup than we did? I mean, come on, dude. They're consistently run into the ground. Consistently. It's a joke. I could do better from my couch. And then what do? They hire a player's agent because they think he's going to foster good relationships and goodwill with the players bringing them in. But you know who doesn't want to work with them? The teams. The teams don't want to make trades. If the owners don't want to spend the money and the teams don't want to make trades, where are we headed? For a collision course with disaster. And this is exactly what happens time and time again. The most the Mets ever spend on a free agent was $150 million. It was Carlos Beltran. And by the way, Carlos Beltran, the best switch hitter ever, in my opinion. Phenomenal player. I loved the signing. Fostered by Pedro Martinez. But guys, after that, even Pedro Martinez, he had a couple nice years for us, but you're talking about the tail end of a career. It's just, it has to come to a point where we make the owners put up or shut up. And by the way, Glennie Freeman, I talked about Joe Kelly last week, man. Joe Kelly, stud. Stud. I'll say it one more time, stud. Joe Kelly, the fact that he got suspended 8 games for that was a joke. Equivalent of 22 games in a shortened season like this. It's a joke. The players and the league should have punished the Astros way worse. But they didn't. They didn't do it. So it is what it is. But listen, guys and girls, we have our caller, our special guest today on the line. Excited, very excited to have him in. Chris Donnelly, are you there with us, buddy?
I am here, John. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely, man. Thank you for taking the time. I know you're super busy. It's a busy, confusing time for everybody right now, so we appreciate the time. We have a lot to go through, not that much time. So first and foremost, I want to ask a question. And Anthony Buzio, by the way, one of my followers said he had 2 of your books, so he's on with us. Super interested in some things here. How did you get into being an author for these specific teams? What made you want to do it? What sparked it for you?
Sure. So the first book I did was Baseball's Greatest Series, which looks at the Yankees and the Mariners 95 division series. And just to give you some quick background on myself, I was born and raised in North Jersey and grew up a Yankees fan. And I started watching the Yankees in the early 90s when they were a really terrible team. My first vivid memory of a Yankee game was Andy Hawkins pitching and losing a no-hitter in 1990. So, I mean, the Yankees were just not good. And then when they made the playoffs finally in 1995, that series was just so huge at the moment. And then the games themselves were just so incredible, even though the Yankees ultimately lost in what for me was heartbreaking fashion, what for Mets fans like you was probably wonderful fashion. It stayed with me for a long time, just the memories of that. And I always thought, the more I learned about it, I just thought it was really, really interesting and would make a great book. And I wasn't an author, and I was out to dinner one night with my then girlfriend, now wife, and I said, I'm kicking around this idea. I just don't know what to do about it. And she said, well, just do it. Just go home and start working on it. And that's basically what I did. I started researching, I started writing, I started reaching out to a lot of the players who took part in the series and put a book together and found a publisher, and that was the start.
That's awesome. Is it for you from there, obviously creative-wise, you definitely have to be an artist, especially mentally, to be able to paint a picture through words, right? And it's sometimes people don't realize that the books are better than movies. I always think whatever it is, Lord of the Rings, it doesn't matter what it is, whatever you read, the books are always much more vivid. They paint a much better picture than a movie. For you, once you wrote that first book, was it just the floodgates opened and you knew from there you just had a passion for it and wanted to continue going?
I think partially. As I was writing the first book, I learned a lot about certain parts of the Yankees that I was kind of familiar with, but didn't know too well, and that includes a lot of their history in the '80s, which to me is much more fascinating than the Bronx Zoo era teams. The Yankees of the '80s were really chaotic. They didn't win any championships, and they were just sort of a daily soap opera. And it gave me the idea for what would be the last book that I did, which was looking at the Yankees and the Mets throughout the 1980s and sort of how the city swings to being a Mets city for the first time ever. And so I just thought, oh, what the hell? I already did one book. I might as well go for another one. So it ultimately, what ended up happening is I had to shelve that idea because I was presented this other book idea, which was how the Yankees explain New York, which was sort of talking about the history of New York City and the Yankees and how they're actually oddly really similar when you look at various components of it. And then eventually I got back to the Mets Yankees book, and that came out last year. But yeah, as I'm doing it, all these more ideas pop up in your head, and you just think, wow, these would be interesting things to pursue. And so I have sort of 10 or 15 sort of floating around right now, and it's just a matter of picking one that I can really focus on and make sure I do a good job of explaining the story and do it accurately.
Energy-wise, 80s, right? The Mets, like you said, they started to become more of a Mets town, right? And I think there's a lot to be said for teams that never really have their time to shine, but everyone's sort of they're clamoring for it, right? Like as a Mets fan, I'm always looking across the way, and I'm always saying to myself, "Wow, the Yankees just are so good all the time." And even in the early '90s, you said it. You know, what they had to show for it was Donnie baseball, but the energy switch, would you say, what would you say was better in your opinion? The energy swing of it becoming a Mets town where you have all those big names in the 80s, or all of a sudden 96 hits and the Yankees have their core four. They have everybody is looking up. And I mean, Joe Torre was not really known for his like astute, managerial skills, right? So he was more of a people person. So what would you say was more exciting? The Mets having all those big names in the 80s and sort of coming from nowhere, so to speak, as a team that hasn't really ever had that limelight. Where, listen, the Yankees, even though they weren't that great, they are perennial winners. They've won 27 World Series, or that core four start for the Yankees, for you, at least personally.
I think it depends a little on how you look at it. I mean, if you're going to view it strictly from terms of baseball as a sport, then you probably would go with the Yankees of the '90s and how they created that dynasty and how they won those championships. Because really, I think with the exception of the '98 team, none of those teams could be considered the best team in baseball. I mean, the '96 Yankees only won 92 games. There are plenty of Yankee teams that have won more than that in the season and not even made it to the World Series. But they did the little things, and they just had the right pieces to make it work. So I think from a strictly baseball standpoint, that's more appealing. I think if you're looking at it from a strictly entertainment standpoint, it's really hard to beat those Mets teams of the 1980s, who were not just great teams, but to look at the entertainment value that they provided and sort of how the rest of baseball collectively hated the Mets. And hated their attitude, and they hated the scum bunch, and I mean, it's really great stuff, and it makes you realize that the '86 Mets, as we know them, couldn't possibly exist in today's world. I mean, with Twitter and
no way, and
everybody having a camera, I mean, it's an impossibility. So you look back on them now, and you appreciate them so much more for what they were, knowing that we will probably never ever see another team like that. Not just Mets, but really any team that exists like that ever again.
I mean, the closest, and I know it's not because of the late night antics and sort of the off the field stuff that we got from Strawberry and Doc, but those Boston Red Sox teams, I forgot the Misfits or whatever they were called when they won the World Series, Johnny Damon and the long hair and not really caring. I think it's probably the closest, but more of like a politically correct version of the Mets. There's no way now with Twitter and the stuff Dykstra did and the stuff these players did back then, there is a 0% chance that they last more than 10 games before their suspensions and fines.
Yep.
And having it be the way it did. Just letting you know, I have a guest that joined in, a co-host, Sal Angeletti. He does Talking Baseball, big Yankee fan also, so this was something he wanted to join in on with us. He just sat down with me. Sal, what's going on, buddy? How we doing?
Hey, how's it going, gentlemen? I was listening to the Yankee game outside, and the Phillies just jumped ahead 4-3 in the bottom of the third.
Phillies jumped ahead?
Yeah.
Yeah, don't worry. Judge will hit a 4-run home run here soon.
Hap can't pitch anymore. I think he's got to go back to the little leagues.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter when you have that batting lineup. You're hitting 10 runs a game. Who cares? But it's we're talking here. We're going through Chris Donnelly, author of 3 books, Yankees fan. So obviously, it's great to have him in. Great to have some insight. What was the best for you as a Yankee fan, Chris? Best Yankees team that you got to see, in your opinion? I'm putting you on the spot. I know it's tough. There's a lot of great teams, right? What was the best team for you that you got to see and watch?
It would have to be the 98 team, which I'm sure a lot of people might roll their eyes as a Yankee fan bias, but I would consider that 98 team probably the best team that there's ever been in history. And I would say that because some people would point to the fact that they didn't have superstars, and that's why they're not better than the 27 Yankees or 75 Reds or some other teams. But I think that's kind of the point, is that they didn't have superstars. And that's really what the definition of a team should be. It should be a collection of players who all around are contributing. And I mean, that team was just incredible to watch because, they went 125 and 50. That's just remarkable. Again, something I don't know if we'll ever see matched in our lifetime. And it was amazing to watch them and to see them go down 2-1 at one point in the postseason. It just didn't seem possible because you got so spoiled by all the winning. So they were the best team that I've watched as a Yankee fan. And I think the most enjoyable team is slightly different. Obviously, the 96 championship team was great. The 94 team that got wiped out by the strike was great because it was the first time I got to see the Yankees be a really, truly dominant team. But I think the 2017 team was a lot of fun to watch because the expectations for what happened weren't there that year. They were still in what for the Yankees would be considered a rebuilding year, although it wasn't really a full rebuild. But that Aaron Judge became what he became that year, and that all these different pieces sort of worked out, and that they came within a game of making the World Series when there were no expectations for that going into the season. That was probably the most fun team to watch.
I know, Sal. You agree with 2000? You agree with the 98?
98. Yeah, that you hear Bob Costas, making the calls with the Yankees. It's great because, like he said, there were no superstars on that team, and after they won all those championships, you went out and got Mike Mussina. You got your the Giambino, and they really didn't come close after that. From 2000 to 2009, they made the playoffs. They made the World Series. They lost to the Angels a lot. They couldn't get past the Tigers at one point, and then that was all for Joe Torre. They figured that was it. He didn't hit the right buttons, or he didn't call the game with all the those bugs flying around. What's his name's face during a game and everything.
In Cleveland, right? In Cleveland,
yeah.
In Cleveland with those maggots. What are those bugs called that are just
gnats? Annoying
gnats.
Midges.
There you go. That literally just infest that ballpark. It's wild to watch a game when you see them hovering around the pitcher. You're like, dude, what is happening right now? Listen, I mean, it's a tough dynamic, but there's never been a team in my time that's been managed as well as the Yankees. And every single time that I find a reason to say, well, they bought a championship or whatever the case may be, I have to turn around and say to myself, you can pay for players, but the players have to fit in, right?
Exactly, yeah.
And there's never been a time where a team's loaded up like they did in '96, where you saw more players come up. And listen, by the way, the dynamic, there was some tough, it seemed to me, there was some tough personalities. Paul O'Neill's a tough personality.
That was a steal of a trade.
No, it was
Roberto Kelly for Paul O'Neill. How you
But you would think you have young guys coming in that there may be some friction, whatever. But it's a testament to Joe Torre's leadership of men. And listen, a Joe Torre there's no way a Joe Torre with the analytics now.
Right.
He's just a mere puppet at this point, right? He would just be something. Yeah.
Well,
So
don't forget when the headlines came out in the back of the Daily News here is Clueless Joe. Nobody thought he would be a manager. New York is a very stressful place to either play or manage. And don't forget, I watched a lot of the Mets. They had, David Johnson he's a great manager.
yeah.
The Mets just never rebuilt after they won. And like after they lost to the Yankees in 2000, you rebuilt. Who did you get? Mo Vaughn and Roberto Alomar. And then you got who was the pitcher they got from Pittsburgh with the hot wife? I can't think of his name. Yeah.
I'm forgetting now.
It'll
Come.
I'm not. My wife's listening. I'm not answering that question. So.
So is mine. So we're all forgetting right now.
I can't think of his name.
And by the way, not only is that, my grandmother listens and my mom, they love to listen in. So I'd really be down, a creek with no paddle there. They would all be at that. Storming the gates, the women in my life. But listen, I want to talk a little bit. I see your fourth book here, following the Mets and the Yankees through the '90s up to the Subway Series. Chris, I have a question for you. Subway Series, right? 2000. A lot of personalities. Benny Agbayani in the news, going crazy. Ventura, Piazza. We have a lot of big personalities. The best time for me, I vividly remember talking to friends about it and feeling as though it's probably one of the greatest moments. Is that something for you in your book that will really be one of the highlights for you? That Subway Series, that culmination of those teams sort of building up and getting to that point, is that going to be a real highlight in that fourth book for you?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, with this next book, what I really want to do is I realized that with the last book, which looks at the Mets and Yankees through the 80s, and how the city becomes a New York team. After it came out, I sort of realized, well, the story isn't really done there. And I thought it'd be interesting to talk about how the flip back to being a Yankees town happens, right? What happens to the Mets that caused them to not have this dynasty that everybody thought was going to be created, and what causes them to, by 1993, be essentially the worst team in baseball, and then rebuild, and then get back to being a competitive team, which I don't think they really get too much credit for. It hasn't been written about a lot, where the Mets got to by the end of the 90s. They were an amazing team, and I would argue the 99 team was probably better than the 2000 team.
It was, yeah.
But both great teams. And so I want to look at that further, and then of course I wanted to get to the point where you really have the ultimate matchup for the heart of New York, right? I mean, you can talk about records and you can talk about who wins more titles, but once you finally get head to head in the biggest possible matchup, now you know who it is, right? And if the Mets had come away winning that, then you could argue that's 3 titles for the Yankees, 96, 98, 99, didn't really matter. I'm sure George Steinbrenner would have felt that way. So it was just something I thought would be interesting to delve into, and I think will be fun to read about. I know some stories have been told, but I really don't think the Mets have been examined in the 90s as well as they should have, or get the credit that they deserve.
I agree, man. I think, listen, from a person, you know what I think the problem is? I said it earlier. I think there's not many teams who do less with more than the Mets do, unfortunately, and I think that's been our MO since the 80s. I think the problem is we have an uncanny ability to have prospects, to mold them well, to bring them through the farm system, bring them up, and then never finish what happens with them after, and for me, I see it time and time again where the pitching staff, I said it before, 2015, there was a Sports Center article about the Mets, generational pitching staff, Harvey, Syndergaard, DeGrom, Matz, right? And then before that, earlier in years prior to that, you had David Wright and Jose Reyes were supposed to be the cornerstones of the franchise. And unfortunately, listen, there was a lot that happened to Reyes over that time, and then David Wright with the back injuries, which was a tragedy because for all intents and purposes, he was really our Derek Jeter. So there wasn't much. But I think the problem is that when you look, even the 99 team, you're looking at a team that is completely stacked, and you couldn't have said it better, with the talent with Isringhausen, which people forget was a beast, and Al Leiter only at 33. We had a pitching staff, John Olerud, a great defensive first baseman.
Oh, yeah. He was a Yankee killer when he was in Toronto.
Ray Ordonez was one of the greatest defensive shortstops. Couldn't hit, right?
He was great. I loved Ray.
Yeah.
I loved him.
And you're right. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. Robin Ventura always came up big for us. We definitely had teams with names, and we just could not do anything with them, and it's unfortunate.
Don't forget the Braves were like that when they dominated the Western Division. Wow. They always won, and they just couldn't make that next step.
Wow.
They had a great pitching staff with those guys.
Yeah.
I mean,
and I think what we've seen with the Mets is that the clock has always been ticking on their success.
Yes.
Right.
And I'm sure you could make that argument with a lot of other teams, but it always feels as if in 2016 when they sort of made that surprise run and went to the World Series, you just had a feeling that, okay, this is only going to last another year or two before something goes wrong.
Yeah.
It's just sort of been the experience of Met fans, unfortunately, because of what's happened in previous years. I mean, the dynasty after '86 never happened, and there's a lot of reasons for that I'm going to go into the next book. And then in the late '90s, that 99 team and that 2000 team, by 2001, it wasn't there anymore. And the same thing with the teams of 2006. I don't want to make anybody upset and go too far into what happened in 2007 and 2008, but right, the clock was already ticking when the Mets were in the 2006 NLCS, or at least that's just how it felt. There's never been a sustained, prolonged period of success, with the exception of the mid to late 80s. And even then, it never met the expectations of fans and a lot of baseball people, because they were supposed to win more, not just be good. They were supposed to win more. And so I empathize with Mets fans, because it always feels like the clock is ticking once success actually happens for the team.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not. For me, I'm definitely. I joke a lot about it. I'm definitely not a Yankee hater. The reason is because I think a lot of people hate on the success, right? When a team doesn't have that sort of success, they're envious of it. Envious will turn into hatred. Jealousy will turn into hatred very, very quickly. For me, because the Yankees are in the American League, it doesn't bother me until you get to the World Series, right? So you're sort of like, whatever.
Right,
Yankees can win as many games as they want, as long as they don't beat us when it matters. But the Mets for me, just as a fan, watching a New York team with all the pressure they have on it, and I'm definitely one of those fans that I agree with you. The clock is ticking. In my mind, you just want a championship. That's what we want. We want one, right? So you look at it and you say to yourself, how in a New York town, with the money, with the backing, with all of the lust, that goes into this, where everyone's like, man, this is the Mecca, and you can't win a championship, and you have to look at these teams and see how fast they deteriorate. Like you said, it's alarming as a Mets fan to see how quickly it goes downhill, and it's almost as if there's certain teams, you may agree with this, you may not, there's certain teams that can handle that limelight and therefore the sustainability and success. And I think the Yankees are a prime example of a franchise that has been able, and it, by the way, and that is directly correlated to their GM. I feel directly. There is nothing that wavers this guy. Nothing. He's a great baseball mind. He's been there forever. And I think when you have somebody who has that longevity and is a fixture in the organization, you look at him and you say, no matter what, this guy's going to get us there. And the Mets, I just feel, can't handle that limelight. And it's tough for them. And I listen, as Mets fans, we can't handle it either, right? When the Mets make a run in 2015, I'm like bullying people, you know. I'm like, yeah, that's what I told you. The Mets are the greatest, you know. And so listen, obviously we can't handle it either. But I just think the Mets, there's certain teams that the sustainability is directly correlated to how the group of people, personality-wise, is in the clubhouse, who leads them, and who can sort of just say, guys, we're staying even keel. We're going to weather the storm. We're going to go through. And it happens a lot. Teams that make the World Series or Super Bowl or Stanley Cup and they lose, they have a very hard time climbing back up because it's almost as if when they get to the top of that hill, it's a complete fall off, right? So it's very tough. But I'm definitely interested in the fourth book. For sure, man. And for me now, I know it's going to be another tough question, but between Sal's show and this, we've talked to a few authors of some books, and I always ask this question. What's your greatest accomplishment as a writer? What was your favorite book? When you were done, you said, this was it for me. Like you knew you loved it, start to finish.
I think, I hope this answer isn't a bit of a cop-out, but I think it's sort of tied. I mean, like my children, I love all my books equally, of course. but the first book was something new for me and something I'd never done. And the idea that I was I think 25 or 26 when I started writing it. And so the idea that I was interviewing all these guys that I had watched grow up as a kid.
Yeah.
Right. And just having these baseball conversations with them. And then the fact that I was talking to Don Mattingly, who was my favorite player growing up. And now here I am having a 90-minute discussion with him about his career. And then I actually got to spend a little time with him after the book came out in Evansville. And so that was just sort of surreal to me. It just didn't seem to make sense. I felt like I should not be, in this position doing this kind of thing. This is just sort of silly. So, that was just great. And then have the book come out and do all the follow-up stuff about it. The book that just came out last year, about the Yankees and the Mets, that took me a long time to write, in part because, life just sort of got in the way and I had to put the book on the shelf for many, many years. And I had shipped it around to a bunch of publishers and nobody had taken it. And so when I finally got someone to take it, it was just a good feeling. And because it had been so many years and to finish it and to have it out, that was just really, really great. I mean, from the time I started writing it to the time it actually came out was probably about 9 years.
Wow.
So, and look, 6 of those years, nothing was happening. But still, it was something that I really wanted to do after the first book came out because I thought it was a really great and interesting story and something that nobody had really focused on before. I mean, there's been books about the Mets, there's been books about the Yankees. There have been few, if any, that I'm aware of that really talk about both of them, which just strikes me as odd, given the history of the teams in the city. So I think that was just a really proud moment for me to finally have that come out and to have everything that I thought about down on paper. So
I told you, I think that obviously writing a book is definitely an art. You have to have the wherewithal while you're writing it down and speaking about it that you're painting a picture, So it's a testament to sort of have a project for 9 years and be able to come back and have those creative juices still flowing. So that's awesome that you were able to do it and stick with it. And listen, anytime you can have something published and somebody believe in it is a success, man. It's a great deal. So congratulations on the books. And before,
thank you.
I don't know how much more time you have for me, but before we get you out of here, I don't know what we have, but I'd be remiss if I don't talk about the current state of baseball with you. We've talked about some of the past.
Sure.
So, baseball is a bit of an outlier. I talk about it a lot in how the players' union is the strongest in all of the unions, right? If a player committed murder on the field, I'm convinced the players' union would get him off in baseball. And there's no salary cap. It's full carte blanche, whatever the owners want to spend and whatever the mega agents want to get, the Borises, right? And yet, in the beginning of the season this year, COVID hits. It hits the country tremendously hard. 36 million unemployment. It's a real disaster everywhere for everybody. The unknown scares us all. It's a tough time. Baseball is shut down, and the players start to negotiate again in a new CBA. And they're talking about money. They're talking. It's billionaires against millionaires. They're discussing, issues on the field. For you as a fan, as a Yankee fan yourself, you're watching the game. You clearly love the game. You've written 3 books on your 4th about baseball. What was your take on it? How'd you feel about how that was starting to unravel as the season was teetering on the fence?
Well, a couple things on that. One, just to be, full disclosure, I'm a big, strong supporter of unions and labor unions. So when these things happen, I tend to almost always side with the players' point of view. All that said, it kind of, when all this was happening sort of in the spring and early summer, it was concerning because as a fan who remembers vividly the strike of 94 and into 95 and just how crushing that was for baseball, from a fan, but for the players and just for the game in general. I did not want to see things get to that point. And not that's not, I don't mean by COVID because COVID was preventing people from playing, but I mean the discussions over the CBA and new agreements. And if you remember the strike of 94, a lot of the things you were hearing in language was kind of familiar. And so it concerned me that we were headed in that direction. So I'm glad that has been resolved, at least to the point where games could start. Admittedly, I did not think we would be seeing baseball this year. I didn't think we'd really be seeing any sports. My hope is that we can complete the season and in a safe way and that the players can remain safe. I don't know if we're going to get there, but it's been great to have games back and to see ball. Fans not being there, I've been able to adjust to that pretty quickly. So it's been good to have back, and I'm glad that they, as best they could, resolve those issues, at least for the time being.
Yeah, that's right. If they didn't start off, like you said, the strike in 94, which we lost the Montreal Expos, at the time, and they went to Washington. If they didn't start the season, it would have been worse than the 94 strike, and I don't think a lot of fans would have been back at all for next season. And, of course, right now they're all pushing the ticket sales for next year, but there were a lot of players who opted out. Markakis opted out, came back. A lot of guys are still scared, like Cespedes. We really don't know what happened to him.
We know what happened.
And I don't think you'll ever see him again play Major League Baseball after what he just did. There's some things there we don't know that everybody holds back. I'll be honest, I was excited at first, and then, like we were always talking about, does it get worse before it gets started?
Yeah.
So you went from the Marlins being 18 players deep to the Cardinals now being 13 players, and it's when Joey Votto had the whatever he had and didn't have it, and he's back. So if they make it out of this month, it'll be a miracle.
Really think so?
Yeah, I'm on board with him. I think if we make it out without any other, I honestly think if another team comes up with more than 10 cases, I think that's it.
Wow. You know, I'm so
it's a scary thought because now the Yankees got to go to Tampa after this.
Yeah.
And the cases happened in Atlanta with I have no idea what's going to happen.
You know what? I think it's tough because the unknown kills us here, right? So
Exactly,
any player that opts out for COVID, I'm on board with it. The reason why I'm on board with it is because you never second guess somebody's health concerns ever.
Because they got younger kids, they got babies at home, newborns like Trout and stuff like that. And
Absolutely.
And all that.
Yeah. My issue with Cespedes is we heard about the contract, right? So there was the talks with the renegotiations, and the prorated was making $6 million. He had stipulations to increase it with how many at bats. Once he was seated, you know, during the game because he was going through a stretch, we had 9 strikeouts and 13 at bats. And Rojas was like, dude, you can't fight through this in a 60-game season. You're either in or you're not. And they benched him. He sat down and then, you know, he no-showed and then said it was because of COVID. I don't know. I'm still a believer we finish. I'm still a believer we finish, and the reason why I'm a believer is because I do strongly believe that there are a lot of teams that are doing the right thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think that the Yankees are a testament to that. I think that, and look, the Rays are down in Florida. They're in the middle of it, and they haven't had any cases. I think that teams that feel they're in the mix will do what they have to do to stay safe because they know what it means to their bottom dollar.
Right.
They know what it means to the future in baseball, like you alluded to. And I think they know what it means to them this year. I think it's so unique. It's a sprint to the finish, 60 games in 66 days. And I think players, you know how in baseball, in the summer it drags, right? Now the players can see the finish line right from the start. They can see it.
Right.
So they're sort of like, you know what?
If they're healthy.
If they're healthy. No, if they're
Right,
healthy.
yeah.
But I you know, you never want anyone to get sick.
No.
And you want them to stay safe. I definitely was over very quickly, but you know what though? I got used to it because I was watching Korean baseball in the morning at 6 a.m. My daughter would wake up, and you know I turned the TV on. My wife would walk in and say, "What are you watching right now?" I'm like, "Yeah, this is Korean baseball. This is how far I'll go to watch baseball." So yes, I'm watching Korean baseball. But it didn't have any fans, and as long as the commentators are good, right? You know, your color commentators really infuse a lot of energy. It's good to go. Yankees, man. 8-1, Chris. Aaron Judge is a beast. Torres is a beast.
We're 8-1 for now, but the Phillies just went up 5-3 in the top of the fifth.
Okay, so 8-2. Oh my goodness, you know, set the alarms off. You know, but Garrett Cole. I mean, come on, as a Yankee, as a Yankee
as
fan.
of May of last year, he is 19-0.
He's 19 on the regular season, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, come on. Is there you can't be any happier right now, Chris? You can't.
It's been fun. Yeah, I'll I'll try and be understated on that. It's been enjoyable, and it's fun knowing that they're not necessarily rolling on all cylinders right now either. I mean, Sanchez has just been
horrible.
I mean, it's just been. You can't figure it out, but he's just not been there. Gardner has struggled a little bit, although he hit a home run today, so it looks like he's
it was
sort of
a
picking it up.
Gardy party.
Yeah. So
I'm sorry, I missed John Sterling. He's been out for a while.
Yes, no, it's been great to hear him again. So, and Stanton had a hot series in Washington, and he's cooled down a little bit. But
yeah, he's on the
if all these things can come around, I mean, they'll be even stronger than they are now. So, it's fun to watch. I am concerned, just given how the playoffs will work this year, that you can be as good as you want in the regular season,
yeah, we could be 59.
Can happen in that short series.
We could be 59-1 and lose in the playoffs to a hot team. Look at that! Here comes the Oakland A's.
Don't the Mets? Don't the teams get to pick?
Because I was listening to Boomer and Gio yesterday, and I thought Gio was going to jump out of his window.
No, I'm out.
I love him.
Listen, I don't.
He gets excited about the Mets. Oh, stop it already with that team.
No,
he's great.
I'm over. Listen, if I see a Wilpon out in public,
you're gonna hit him.
No.
Okay.
No.
Tombstone?
No, but he has way too much money. I'll lose that immediately. I'd like to upside the head, knock some sense into him. I'm going to tie him to a tree until he sells the team. I'm not going to feed him. Nothing. I'm going to make him sell the team. That's what I'm going to do.
I think he's going to do
I'm going to kidnap him until he sells the team. I cannot watch.
I don't know if it's that guy or A-Rod's going to come in, and that's about it. Unless they go partners with each other. But
Andy Williams, I have 2 questions. We're going to talk about 2 more things real quick. Andy Williams, one of our listeners, watchers on our simulcast, he says, if MLB gets through the 60-game season, should they institute a bubble for the playoff teams? What do you think about that, Chris?
that's a wow.
That's an interesting idea. I mean, I was before baseball started, I kind of thought that the idea of a bubble would be a better idea. That you could essentially just take, I don't know, 5 or 6 teams.
I thought that was going to happen.
Regionalize them.
With Arizona,
and just have them play. And those are the teams you play for the season. I thought that might have been a better idea. Maybe something like that works for the playoffs. You can't really say right now because really who knows where we are and what the world will look like in 2 months.
I know.
But I don't think it's a terrible idea at all.
Yeah, with you got the D-back stadium.
Yeah.
The Dome, and then you got wherever the Rockies and Padres and them all share that one spring training complex.
Yeah.
You can use both facilities and have multiple games.
By the way, I thought football also, what I was saying was, I even thought in football, not to get off topic, just
Are they going to have a season? Because I'm
no, they're not. There's
the Patriots opted out.
Come on, my 18 Miami Marlins get sick from shaking hands. NFL players spit in each other's faces on a daily basis on the offensive line, defense.
True.
There's no way. There's no way. It's I don't even know. I don't even know what they're talking about. But as a Yankee fan, the Astros, the sign stealing scandal, right? That essentially cost the Yankees a World Series, essentially.
They're all batting 100.
But they're still 6-4. It doesn't matter. They're still 6-4. So regardless of what they're batting, they're still 6-4. But for you, do you not think that MLB and the Players Union should have penalized these guys more?
Yeah, I do think it's odd that clearly and obviously something was happening and clearly players knew about it and they sort of skated on it. And that it came down on the managers, which is fine that it comes down on them, but it was a little odd to me that the players didn't sort of see any punishment out of that. And I'm not, I really don't know if that's because many of them were sort of granted immunity for discussing how this all went down. But yeah, I don't know if that was handled well. I mean, look, I wasn't there. I wasn't part of the investigative process, so I can't really speak to it, right? But yeah, it is bizarre. It is bizarre that Kelly gets an 8-game suspension while none of the players involved for hitting and potentially cheating get nothing. I can't sit here and tell you that Jose Altuve was wearing of course, something on him. But man, it's really hard to look at those pictures and the video and hear his ever-changing explanations and not believe that something more was going on there. So,
I mean, it's for me. I'm on previous shows, Chris. I'm much more animated than I am today. Normally, I'm standing up, like throwing things at the camera. But the reason is obviously the storm hit yesterday. The power went out, and we still don't have power. And I just don't think I slept a wink last night, checking on my daughter, every so often to make sure the room was cool enough, whatever. So I'm a little more subdued today. But for me, Joe Kelly throwing the ball at these guys. I'm never an advocate for anybody throwing at anybody's head, but I'll tell you what.
It was hysterical.
I'll tell you right now, I will be first in line to get a Joe Kelly jersey because all these unwritten rules in baseball, right? And if the players are sort of policing themselves, so to speak, then you know what? If Joe Kelly's going to be the first guy to step up and say you guys are not going to get away with it without fans, then I'm all in on every single series, one game, one pitcher stepping up, and saying, I'm hitting this guy in the back, I'm hitting him in the thigh, don't throw it at anyone's head, because it's super dangerous and scary to even see on TV. It really is. It's very scary.
Because
But
you think of Stanton, what happened in Miami.
absolutely. I mean, listen, it's just a very, very scary proposition. These guys throw high 90s. It's you're throwing a missile. But these guys, something has to happen to these guys. And if the players are policing themselves with their unwritten rules like they have now, then there's no reason why, to me, the baseball's union cannot call up Manfred or the owners and say, guys, I understand we weren't able to do something because they were granted immunity, which, Chris, you stated, and it's true. We need to be able to do something without being penalized, the equivalent of 22 regular season games. So Joe Kelly, to me, I'm not the type of guy to say people are like heroes when they're playing baseball, right? But for me, Joe Kelly is definitely he's definitely out in the forefront of people who handle this, in my opinion, the only way it can be handled. And you have to take care of business on the field, and I think we should see it more. Unfortunately, like I said, I'm a bit of a yahoo. Like I don't think in any profession, especially one that's a game, somebody should make $300 million and only do something good a quarter of the time. As baseball, where they bat 250 and Bryce Harper gets paid $330 million. Like, to me, it's a little absurd. I think that Barry Bonds should get paid $330 million for hitting 73 home runs. And putting fans in the seats, such as myself. When I pay $300 or $400 to go to the game, I bring my wife. We bring some friends. By the time we're done having 4 beers at $12 a piece and a hot dog and a cheesesteak, after parking and tickets, I left spending $800. So I just want to see more personally. That's a personal thing for me, but I think that the players need to do more. But either way, it's obviously we're here discussing it, and we weren't there in the rooms like you stated. And hopefully we see a couple more Astros players a little bit afraid to step up to the plate.
Okay. Here's a question for both of you.
So,
if it's a regular 162-game season, not this, those players get the punishment they deserved, or is it because of this now?
No, I think there was immunity. Period. I think that the players got immunity. If I'm not mistaken, I think Chris said it. I think that the players beforehand, they said we will talk about it only. And by the way, listen, not to beat a dead horse again, but this goes back to how just awful the Mets are as an organization. They knew that Carlos Beltran was involved in it somehow and hired him as a manager anyway. Are they not the joke of all time? I mean, it's awful. I'm excited to see Beltran. I say it all the time. Baseball is a heavy Hispanic-led league. Tremendous amount of Hispanic players with a great following, and Carlos Beltran was one of the greatest switch hitters of all time. Hispanic guy that I felt would really galvanize the clubhouse. I was so excited to get him because I do believe that it says a lot when a team can hire somebody that the players can relate to. I like that. I love when you see a team sort of say, like, this is our guy, and Beltran to me was a great hire, and before it got started, it was already derailed for sure. So, tough dynamic.
Yeah, guys, I apologize. I do have to jump, but I will just say my last comment being that I could never call Joe Kelly a hero of mine. He's a former Red Sox, so I appreciate that you could do that. But as a former Boston player who hit a Yankee once, I can't quite call him the hero.
No.
I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, there's no heroes here. But Chris,
who did he hit? A-Rod? Who did he hit? A-Rod?
Joe Kelly. I forgot.
He hit Tyler Austin.
Tyler Austin. Yes. Yeah. He went right at him.
Yeah.
Tyler Austin. Right at him.
Listen, it's a good deal, Chris. I appreciate the time today, man. Thank you so much for joining us on the show, talking about your books, talking baseball with us. I wish you obviously nothing but success on your 4th book and health for you and your family moving forward. And just remember, go Mets.
Well, I wish you luck both with your power and with your baseball team. So I hope both pull through. So thanks for having me on, guys. I really appreciate it.
Take care, Chris.
Thanks,
It was a
Chris.
pleasure meeting you.
Take
All
care,
right,
buddy.
Chris. Take care. Same here.
Jeez, that's great, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
But let me tell you, New York fans will love that because, like he said, nobody wrote about the Mets and Yankees together in one book.
Yeah.
They'll leave that alive here
You know, it's
in the metro area, without a doubt.
it's awesome. We talk about it. You know, you had on a couple authors also, right, on your show. And it's so interesting to hear the dynamic of how an author in his mind will look at things and the things that they enjoy the most compared to what we would enjoy, right? And it really is extremely hard. People don't give when they see a book, they're just looking at a book, a lot of pages, whatever the case may be. They're not understanding how much creativity goes into.
Right, you see that title on the bookshelf, you're like, I'm interested. I got to grab that book as a sports fan.
Yeah,
Especially here in the city.
absolutely.
Whatever, it's, talking about I don't know if you guys touched on it, the 88 season. The Mets.
Yeah, well, he was.
Yeah,
Chris got
and-
into it
and
briefly. Yeah,
That was almost the first closest Subway Series because the Yankees were on a tear in 88 and they finished 3.5 out. And the Mets, we know, won the division in the East.
yeah.
And we were like, I think the Yankees blew it when they were in Detroit towards the latter end of the year. And they were really up there.
It's so hard to paint that picture in their minds, and it's funny because I think that there's no better city, no better place, and an easier place to paint that vivid of a picture than New York. How many?
Right.
How many characters, true characters have come
Right,
through?
exactly.
Have come through the Bronx, have come through Queens,
And played with both teams.
and play with, which is also a crazy dynamic, a very crazy dynamic. And by the way, even the history of that, think about the ones that played for both teams and what they meant to certain franchises,
And made the World Series with both.
right? It's
Gooden and Strawberry to be
Yeah.
as an example.
but how much did they mean, those particular players, when they came up with the Mets? How much did they mean to that franchise? And
To tell you something, when I work security at Shea, let me tell you, those fans out there are diehard, man. They never say die until
They're dead.
we got a great team this year. Where are we gonna go? And it's trades aren't easy to make.
no,
Guys coming up through the ranks aren't easy. Like you touched upon David Wright and Jose. Imagine if David Wright now isn't hurt. He's still playing on the Mets. You got him and Alonso in that lineup.
in the hot corners,
That's
Sick.
insane.
sick. By the way, Conforto is another great piece in the outfield, and McNeil, Jeff McNeil, which
Back
people
where he should be in
back
the
where he
infield.
should be in the infield. I mean, and Amar Rosario.
Got to work out the kinks.
Yeah.
Get-
I know. I'm not worried. Listen, I'm not worried about the fielding. I'm worried about the bullpen. The bullpen, dude, Sal. The bullpen
Let me tell
cannot
you
get any
something.
worse.
I'm not getting the idea. Do what the Yankees did before you made Mariano the closer. Wetland was their closer, and you had Mariano back before him. So put Diaz back.
Yep.
Give him a little lesson. Have Dylan Betances in. Everybody knows what he did with the Yankees, so
Yep.
Mets shouldn't second guess what this guy did with the Yankees. He's a great closer, and literally whatever he came in the eighth. And when Mo was down, he was the Yankee relief pitcher.
Absolutely.
So give Dylan the shot. Move Diaz to the eighth inning or seventh. At least then the Mets may have a chance with Dylan's in. We're down by 2. Bring Dylan in instead of Diaz
Yep.
or run. I mean,
But-
give the
But this is though. Once again we go back to this. This is stereotypical Mets, bro. This is who the Mets as an organization has become. They're a day late and a dollar short. No, they're a day late and a dollar too cheap. The fact is you trade whatever prospects you have left in your farm system for the win now probability of percentage-wise 0, and saying we can make a run because we're trying to just piece things together. Here are the facts, man. The Mets will eventually waste Pete Alonso. The Mets
I
will.
really hope not. The kid is.
They name the last franchise Met that got a franchise contract.
Wasn't it right?
And who else?
That's about it.
Okay.
Off the top of my head, that's all I know.
But
Yeah.
that's the problem is you go to the Yankees, right? 96 Jeter comes up. Okay? Throughout that time from 96 till now, they have always continued to reinvent themselves, not only with players coming up, but through signings saying, we'll plug a hole and we'll get quality leaders. CC Sabathia, $600 million contract, right? When it first came up, it was like over time, whatever it was like $200 million or something like that. But over time, he got some re-signings and whatever. But in offseason, they spent $600 million in one offseason, and CC Sabathia was part of that. And he was with their organization for over a decade. They won a championship, and he became a leader, a staple in the clubhouse. They continue to get guys that add value to that team, and the Mets will never get that guy. And when they bring somebody up, look at what the Yankees have right now: Torres, Sanchez, Andujar, Judge. Dude, I've never seen a better nucleus of hitters in my life.
But here's the thing, bud. You could. It could be Andujar and Frazier might be on a trade block.
Yeah,
Clint
because of the
Frazier, yeah.
depth.
So you might see one of those two get it for another pitcher,
Of course.
without a doubt. And unfortunately, I think it might be Andujar. I think.
But here's the thing, though. You're going to get back knowing Cashman, who he is and what he does.
Right.
You're going to get back such a haul.
Well, don't forget, before Cashman, you have Bob Watson and
Yeah, but do we even need to, we don't even need to
and the Stick
think.
G. Michael before, he ran off for a bit.
I mean, Cashman is just, the guy is so next level in his baseball decisions. And as a Mets fan, I'm very envious of what he's been able to do in his tenure as Yankees GM. And it really, he always buys at the right time, sells at the right time. Dude, this guy sold Chapman,
To the Cubs.
got back a wealth of talent,
And Gleyber Torres.
and then re-signed him the next year. I mean, dude, it's
They knew that was going to happen. They predicted it, yeah.
but bro, it's
Yep.
so it's next level, right? You'll never see the Mets do that. You'll never see them do that, and it's just these are the things that separate the good from the great, the flash in the pans to the consistent, the winners from the losers. This is just what separates a man. So I don't know. I'm not even cautiously optimistic about. I'm not. I just already
They
know
will make the playoffs. The Mets.
this
Without a
year.
doubt. Yeah.
No shot.
I think they will.
They can't.
I think they will, and then next year, from when this is all over, I believe they're going to, whoever's going to lead the team, whatever new ownerships there is, if it's A-Rod, let me tell you, this guy is the biggest baseball knowledge. You could love him or hate him for whatever he did as a Yankee or Ranger or whatever. He almost became a Met.
Yep.
Almost became a Red Sox, and that's why the Red Sox hated him, the Yankees for that. They swooped in the middle.
I hope. I hope.
He is the biggest knowledgeable guy on the planet. If you watch, I love watching ESPN. I'm just hearing him.
Yep. I love him.
And somebody made a comment on Facebook, "Oh, when is this guy gonna shut up?" Well, listen to what he's saying.
No, he's phenomenal.
He could sit there and call a game and go, this guy, he's got the knowledge of forget about it.
Yep. No, I'm with you. All right. Well, listen, man. I just want to thank Chris Donnelly again for coming on the show, giving us some great insight, telling us a little bit about his work, his books.
Oh yeah, look for those books, fans. I mean, if you're a Meta Yankee fan, you got to grab it.
And
without a doubt.
by the way, they're like you said, there really is no books that really explain both and get to see them side by side simultaneously. The internal fight of the city, which is one of the greatest cities in the world. So thank you, Chris Donnelly, for joining the show for sure. Sal Angeletti for sneaking in the booth here with me, brother.
Somebody left the door open.
In 4 minutes, it's amazing who will walk in when the door's left open. In 4 minutes, Sal stays on here with Talking Baseball with Sal Angeletti. I know he's going to have a lot to say about all that's going on in baseball, so stay tuned and locked in. He's going to get you some great baseball insight. Get the Hamilton Radio app. You're listening here on HamiltonRadio.net on My Sports Radio with your boy, John Entel. I'll see you in 6 days, 22 hours. We'll catch you later.
You're rocking with the newest radio show on Hamilton Radio, My Sports Radio.
Deals. And Bonds hits one high. It's a deal.